As a child growing up, I missed out on the Final Fantasy VII craze. I was strictly a Nintendo 64 kid. I wasn't able to have more than one system at the time. But I remember the commercials. The story of a love that can never be, and a hate that always was. Now, before you shippers come at me, I got that from the commercial. I'll be sure to address that in the video. Come to think of it, the commercials pretty much gave away that Aerith died. Oh, spoiler warning? I will mark spoilers for this game, but the original, it's a nearly 23-year-old game. You had your chance. I remember when this game was announced at E3 2015. The internet went nuts. Then we promptly heard nothing about it for years, and it was announced later on that the game would be multiple parts. The first few hours of Final Fantasy VII all took place on Midgar, and it's widely agreed to be the standout section of the whole game, so Square decided to make an entire game expanding on that. As for my faults in the original game, well, I'll save that for when I do the Final Fantasy series, although everyone and their mother is currently doing that, so I may want to hold off. It'd also be nice if Square could release Final Fantasy 1 through 6 on modern consoles to make recording them a lot easier, not to mention 11 and 14 are online games, which are not really my thing. Can I even still play 11? It's an old online game. I can't imagine the servers are still up. And then again, I'm still doing Kingdom Hearts, and everybody wants me to make more Naruto videos, so I have to do that too. Having not grown up with the original FF7, I don't have the attachment to it that so many others do. But that gives me a more unique perspective, I suppose. I have played it though. I will say the game has aged, like most of the 3D classics from that generation of gaming. But I still love Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time, even though they have aged as well from a technical standpoint, so I can't hold that against it. But the less I say about the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, the better. Tatsuya Nomura directed this. Where does he find the time to do both Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts? And I'm cautious going forward knowing that, as I said in my Kingdom Hearts 1 video, he is a designer, not a writer. So let's dive right into it. What Square has done with this remake, well, that's the thing. This is not technically a remake, but more of a reimagining. Kind of like the rebuild of Evangelion. I've never seen either show. Should I? Or that new Digimon Adventure remake seems to be shaping up to be. I need to watch that, by the way. What they have done is expand on the story of the original. The story follows Cloud Strife, an ex-soldier mercenary who is working for Avalanche as part of a job for the time. Along the way, Cloud meets up with several characters, such as Baird, who is a walking Mr. T stereotype, Tifa, an old childhood friend of his, and Aerith, the flower girl, and we'll get to them in a minute. This remake basically expands on the original game, whereas in the original, the bombing of the Mako reactor was underplayed. Here you actually get to see the destruction it caused, allowing you to see that Avalanche aren't exactly supposed to be clear-cut good guys, although it does specify that Avalanche didn't intend for the explosion to be that big. I get the idea of expanding the world of Final Fantasy VII, which the compilation absolutely failed to do, at least in a good way. So let's talk about the characters real quick. The game massively expands on minor characters Biggs, Wedge, and Jessie, with Chapter 4 being dedicated to a mission about them. Yeah, Final Fantasy always has characters named Biggs and Wedge in an obvious homage to Star Wars, but they're usually always minor characters. Here we get to meet Jessie's parents and see her views, and she's kind of played up as a love interest to Cloud, even though Emo Boy doesn't seem to be too interested whenever a girl flirts with him. Why do girls like emo boys anyway? She's a cheerful, hyperactive woman who tries to look on the positive side of life. Wedge is voiced by Badger from Breaking Bad. Should have got Skinny Pete to do Biggs. But Wedge is characterized as a kind-hearted soul who loves cats, so good for him. Biggs is later revealed to have an eye out for orphans, which is something he didn't have going for him in the original. Now for Cloud. Cloud is the main character, so he's the one we spend the most time with. He's cold, aloof, emo. I'm getting Sasuke vibes. Here's the thing, Cloud's the kind of character who needs other characters to give him some volume, which he gets when he interacts with characters such as Barrett, Tifa, and Aerith. At the beginning of the game, he's quite standoffish, very rarely caring about anything other than his pay. He outright tries to kill Johnny when he rats out Jessie, but this may be due to Sephiroth's influence coming into play, I'm not entirely sure. Barrett he forms a relationship, sort of becoming fire-forged friends. Tifa is an old childhood friend who does seem to want Cloud to open up to people. It's when he first meets Aerith that Cloud starts to open up to people. He also seems to be a very good dancer. And he makes for a very cute looking girl.
Not a word.
Not even one?
No!
But you're so pretty.
Did I just say that out loud? Deep down beneath that facade is someone with a heart of gold.
I'll do it for 3 gil.
Huh?
Barrett, well, let's be honest, in the original he was basically Mr. T. Here he doesn't say, "I pity the fool." Yet, anyway. He likes to swear a lot, so his foul mouth has been kept intact. He's quite devoted to Avalanche's cause, and doesn't like the notion that his group is a bunch of eco-terrorists because he is determined to save the planet from Shinra's misuse. But really, his relationship with his adopted daughter, Marlene, is what gives him some humanity.
Daddy, you're home.
That's right, Angel,
Welcome
I am.
back.
Have you been a good girl?
Yeah, I've been helping Tifa.
Oh, you
When the
did?
Sector 7 slums are destroyed, he takes it the hardest.
Marlene! Marlene! Biggs! Wedge! Jesse! God damn it! God damn you! God damn you all!
So Barrett is a complicated character. Tifa is the bartender, childhood friend of Cloud's. In this game, she's a bit more of a reluctant warrior. She has insecurities, such as needing Cloud to get her off the train, which is a little weird as such a scene didn't exist in the original. The loss of the Sector 7 slums and everyone close to them really wears on her hard, but thankfully she doesn't stay this way for long. She's got a big sister vibe to her with Marlene, and she's definitely into girly things, making her a bit of a foil for Aerith. Speaking of, Aerith has such personality in this game, I just love it. She's quite motherly and a friend to all children, but her connection to the planet has caused her to be aware of something going on. You see, it's hinted that Aerith is aware of previous events, and that she's aware that she's destined to die, but, well, we'll get into that. I just love how she tries to get Cloud to high-five her, not succeeding until the very end. She's an ancient and the last of the Cetros, and that makes her highly valuable to Shinra. Now, one thing I've learned over the years is that among the fanbase, there's a huge war as to who is the better girl, Aerith or Tifa. I never got that, really. I know it comes down to shipping.
It'll be fine. We've got a bodyguard, don't forget. Mine. Right?
Ghosts aren't my thing.
You're just being modest. After you.
Mind letting me go then?
Yeah, the most infamous love triangle in video game history. Now, if you don't know what shipping is, I'll just let J. Jonah Jameson fill you in.
The internet's rife with footage of Spider-Man chasing the Black Cat across the rooftops. And apparently, there are hordes of young people cheering them on. They're called shippers. No, that has nothing to do with boats. It's short for relationship. As in, they really want Spider-Man and the Black Cat to be together romantically. Or they really don't. And they have quite intense arguments about it. Flame wars, I believe is the term. You know, in my day, we didn't have time for flame wars about shipping. You know why? Because we had jobs. So here's J. Jonah Jameson's public service announcement to our youth. You're into shipping? Join the Navy!
How is it that I've had to show that clip twice now? Am I going to have to use it every time I talk about shipping? As for who I like better, well, let's see this scene.
What the hell?
Get down!
Down, you stupid! Wait!
Good job, Eric.
It was nothing compared to you.
You see, Aerith and Tifa are great friends. Why can't the rest of the fanbase get along like both of them? Don't answer that. I will never understand waifu wars where the fanbase has to like one girl over the other. It's like the video game version of Sakura and Hinata. As for my thoughts on this love triangle, I'll save that for when I do the original game. I'd say screw Cloud, Aerith and Tifa should just get on with each other. That'd be awesome. Sephiroth makes much earlier appearances than he did at this point in the original. He's like an ominous force that's always messing with Cloud. Every time Cloud sees him, he goes into a furious stupor because Sephiroth killed his mother. But there's hints that there's something more to Sephiroth, that this isn't how things are supposed to be, and oh boy, we're in for a mind screw going forward. Which I think people need to remember kinda happened in the original game. Shinra is presented as the big bad of this part. They are corrupt corporate executives who seek to use Mako energy to drain the planet to fund their own agenda, environmental damage. President Shinra is set up as the big bad, but he's only child's play to the real deal. The Turks are very much punch clock villains, as they don't always agree with everything Shinra does. But they'll be fleshed out in later installments, I imagine. Don Corneo is even more of a creep than he was in the original game, and Hojo is just as depraved as ever, where he actually suggests having some soldiers rape Aerith while she's in captivity. Such a sickeningly evil, loathsome man! But then you get to the part with the Arbors of Fate, and let me tell you, yeah, they are here to basically make sure the timeline continues on the path set from 1997. That's the big twist of the game. It is a remake, but in the sense that they are remaking Final Fantasy VII's entire story. The Arbiters of Fate are trying to make sure the timeline stays the same, but Sephiroth is trying to break fate so that he won't lose this time. So this isn't a remake, it's technically a sequel. Yeah, that's kind of controversial. This reminds me of Mortal Kombat 9, where it was like a remake of Mortal Kombat 1 through 3, except not really, it just created a new timeline. Or the 2009 Star Trek, where it was technically a sequel and a reboot at the same time. Well, yeah, so I'm breaking my rule of doing a series in order here, aren't I? But I couldn't help it. I'll say my thoughts on where it's going for the end. I think the Arbors of Fate, yeah, they do feel like something from Kingdom Hearts. Did you play the Rewind DLC for 3? Yeah, that went full anime. I understand what they're trying to do, but there had to have been a better way to do it. The writing can be a little hard sometimes. Japanese writing is different from American writing. Some of the dialogue is a little corny, to put it mildly. But what really excels are the character interactions. That's what I want from my stories. I need to care about the characters, and so far, I'm interested to see the direction of where these characters are going to go. Even though I know what direction they went in the original game, so, well, we'll see. There are legitimately amazing moments like when Aerith rescues Marlene from the fire, but there's also weird moments such as the ones with the Arbiters of Fate, and yeah, it's all uneven. For example, they massively expanded on the train graveyard section from the original. In the original, it's just a screen you walked through, but here it's a full-on chapter with Aerith finding the spirits and connecting with them. I love the idea of expanding the world and the characters, and you can get a cutscene in Chapter 14 with either Aerith, Tifa, or Barret, depending on your actions through the story, and they're very informative and play to the shipping aspects of the fandom, except the Barret one. Yeah, we'll go with that. Supposedly there's some mistranslations going on there, which is typical. The original Final Fantasy VII had an infamously terrible translation. The graphics are beautiful at times, but also woefully uneven, like here where Cloud and Aerith are picking flowers, and yet the flowers just magically appear in the basket. Also, every time I'm about to hit a side quest, the game takes a minute to load. The main character models look good, but some of the NPCs look like they aren't finished. I get the style they're going for and it works for this game. The voice acting is fairly hit and miss. Long-time voice actors for these characters have been recast with new voices, and I'm not sure why. I mean, nothing was wrong with their previous voice actors. Aerith has been recast about 4 times now. I think the voice actors do a serviceable job, but one thing Square has always had trouble with when it comes to their English dubs is matching the Japanese lip flaps. This causes the voice actors to take awkward pauses before finishing their lines. But on the plus side, the music is awesome. Some of Final Fantasy's greatest tracks all remixed to perfection, and you can collect them too. Now we cover the gameplay. The basic gameplay of moving with the analog stick is all nice and responsive. With the push of the R2 button, Cloud will run much faster and free roaming. There's lots of incentive to explore to find a chest. You only control Cloud when you're on the free roam unless Cloud isn't in the party, so the game does take time to have you control someone else, but you are usually playing as Cloud. The combat system is very good. You press the square button to attack, the circle button to dodge, and the cross button to open your menu. The triangle button lets you use the character's special ability. Like in the original, you have access to materia. Materia gives you access to magic spells such as healing or elemental spells like fire, blizzard, and thunder. The more you use your materia, the higher you will level up, but the trade-off is the more powerful the spell, the longer it will take to charge, which means you can get hit before you use it, and it uses way more magic. There are mini games to play which I find enjoyable. There's not really much to them, but they make for a nice distraction from the main game. Each character gets more than one weapon, but I find that you're never required to switch out your weapons. You can perfectly keep using Cloud's Buster Sword as the game allows you to level up the weapon of your preference. The level cap is stuck at level 50, so I'm hoping this means Square will let you port your characters over to the second episode, and you'll be able to continue from there. I find that the game's challenge is tough but fair. The best thing you can do if your opponents is filled with stagger gauge, which all depends on what they are weak to. When they're down, you can do so much damage. I find there is some strategy to the fights. Classic difficulty is turn-based, I believe, but I haven't tried it yet. Hard mode is to go through the game without healing items, gotta rely entirely on magic, and yeah, that's a challenge. Cloud is a close-range fighter and the one I largely stick to using. He's quick and relies mainly on quick sword slashes. You get in and get out. I like to equip him with most elemental materia so that he has some immunity. His special ability gives Cloud the ability to punish opponents. He goes into a stance, and though his movement is seriously deterred, he can deal a lot more damage, and it's what you want to use when the enemy is staggered. Barret relies on his minigun Arm of Doom, so he's a long-range fighter. You want to use Barret to take out opponents Cloud can't reach, like the long-range sentry guns. His overcharge ability allows Barret to unleash a huge barrage of bullets at a fast rate, and it's a great way of dealing damage. He also gets the most health of all the characters, but to compensate is very slow. I like to equip him with Thunder because it suits his long-range playstyle. Tifa relies on her fists to fight, so she's a close-ranged fighter. Her biggest weakness is that she can't take a hit. Any kind of hit and she loses a lot of health. To make up for this, she's quick at dealing damage, and she's great at building the stagger gauge. I find it best to use Tifa to get in and get out while also using her haste materia to get a character's ATB built up fast. Her ability, Whirling Uppercut, can be charged. It's a good way to deplete an enemy's gauge. Aerith uses her staff to fire magic, which doesn't do much damage, but she's great at doing long-range damage. She's like a dancer. I like to equip her with healing and status-curing materia because that's what she's made for. Her special ability lets you shoot a beam of flowers at the opponent. Aerith has low HP and isn't very strong, and makes up for her magic and healing abilities. I like using Aerith. She's fun. Red X doesn't become a fully playable character. He's just a guest, but he's used for methods of getting across areas you can't access, and I find that he is good at dealing out healing items when you need it. I'm wondering if he'll be fully playable in the next game, or what the standard will be for some of the characters going forward. Will Vincent and Yuffie still be optional? Who will be playable and who will be guest star party members? I suppose that we will have to wait and see. One thing I wish I could do with Chapter Select, I wish I could pick which part of the chapter I wanted to do. There's biker minigames which are a nice nod to the original, and you can skip these if you want to after you beat them, but why can't I skip the parts of the chapter I don't want to do? Also, I really would have liked to have been able to choose my party, but the game is very linear. I'm assuming the next one will be open world, so hopefully there will be a choice. I'm not sure why the battle system is only for 3 characters at a time when FF15 had a main party of 4, with the occasional guest character, who should have been permanent, but what can you do? There are times when the chapters open up to allow you to do side quests, but they're just time killers really. They do affect your affinity with Aerith or Tifa though. One little touch I noticed is that enemies who don't die lay on the ground, while enemies who actually die fade into the life stream. That's an interesting touch. I remember when I was fighting the Behemoth monster, he's a beast to kill, and eventually I ran out of Phoenix Downs, meaning I couldn't revive Tifa and Barret. But I was able to get in, get out with Cloud, deal a little bit of damage each time, get in, get out. Eventually I managed to get him down to just a little bit of health, but I was running low. He started bringing the ceiling down and I dealt the final blow. But then a piece of debris killed me, so the battle didn't count. Even though every other time I defeated a monster, the cutscene would play and the battle would be over. I was not happy. Also, the checkpoint system when you start over because you missed something, it doesn't send you back to before the boss battle, it sends you back to the story beat you were at, which is stupid. Really, Square Enix has been desperately trying to recapture the magic of Final Fantasy VII. I mean, the original game really was lightning in a bottle. Ever since that, Final Fantasy has struggled to recapture that same feeling. They tried unsuccessfully 10 years ago to get the same feel. They wanted to create something new that wasn't based entirely on nostalgia. So far so good, I'd say. But it's time for the ending, so skip to the end of the video if you don't want to be spoiled. With Aerith rescued from Shinra, the game massively expands on the bike chase with this huge mech coming at you, and I swear my hands started to sweat as I was facing this guy. It really requires mastery of the bike. Once you get that done, Sephiroth is there waiting for you. Then you see images of Zack fighting his last stand. More on that in a second, I assure you. Now the party decides to go challenge Fate. This is the problem with taking visions out of context. It leads to misinformation. Poor communication kills. This is where the game goes completely off the rails with anime stuff. Cloud, Tifa, and Barret start fighting three Fates, while this big Fate is in the background. It keeps changing positions as you go through until you finally fight one at a time, damaging the big Fate by just a little bit. Once that's done, Aerith and Red show up. But the girls are separated and the boys have to take out the two Fates. Then when you're done with that, Cloud teams up with Aerith and Tifa to take out the three Fates while Barret shoots the big one. The Fates combine into one big dragon, then you have to beat them one at a time. It's just so exhausting. What's also annoying is that if you die and get a game over at any point, you have to redo the whole thing all over again. You'd think the Fates would tell them that, hey, we're trying to keep Sephiroth from changing the future where he loses. Although if they found out that Aerith had to die for it to happen, I imagine they would have still tried to find another way. But it's time for the final showdown with Sephiroth.
Let's finish this.
So with Sephiroth, I find the best thing to do is to guard his attacks while in Punisher form, and Cloud will automatically counterattack. The effect of going from building to building definitely reminds me of Advent Children. Eventually one of your party members will show up. Apparently it depends on your affinity with them. I've only gotten 3 combinations so far. My favorite is when Aerith shows up.
Did you miss me?
Not really. He's tough.
Yeah, so what? Screw him.
After dealing him down some damage, a third party member comes to your rescue. And I have no idea what triggers who this is because Barret never shows up first as far as I can tell. Anybody know how to get the different scenarios? Eventually, Sephiroth just powers himself up and things go off the rails crazy as everything is being flown at you. But the final blow is set. But Sephiroth and Cloud are at the edge of time for some reason, and Sephiroth tells him,
7 seconds till the end. Time enough for you, perhaps. But what will you do with it? Let's see.
and now Zack is alive. Well, that sure is different. This is basically a sign that things are going to be very different. The implication is that Aerith knows to some degree the original events of the story, so yeah, this is just like Mortal Kombat 9. Here's my thoughts on them doing a new story. Let them. I used to hate Mortal Kombat 9's story, and I still don't like it, mainly because they did a lot of things for shock value rather than good storytelling, like turning Sub-Zero into a robot and killing off most of their heroes and turning them into revenants. Still hate that to this day. So far, they haven't done anything like that with Final Fantasy VII. Let's hope they don't. So have they ruined anything yet? Well, right now the best thing to do is wait and see. I mean, if you could redo something, what would you do different? The original game will always be there for the original story. It's never going away. So for now, let's see what they've got cooked up. Will Aerith still die? Well, that's for another video. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see it. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please hit that bell, like, and subscribe button. If you want updates, follow me on Twitter, or join my Discord, which are provided in the description below. See you later.